at home on the 90s Knicks teams and those kinds of teams. Defensive acumen.
Are you doing hockey shows still?
Might be changing up the schedule starting this week. I'm not sure what the timing is. I know the schedules are changing a little bit. I had been up until this past week. I did it this week. My Rangers are smoking the Devils right now.
Well, that's right. I'm playing. I took the NBA slate off this morning. I can't remember the last time I didn't play a slate, Terry.
I can't remember you ever saying that to me. I'm in shock. You were the definition of play every slate. No slates off.
I feel like I've let the universe down.
I knew something was wrong. I felt something wrong. I felt a disturbance in the DFS force. I'm assuming the Rangers hold on. It'll be a 2-for-3 day for the New York team.
Nice.
Knickerbockers won earlier. Yankees, the last place in the American League, New York Yankees, unfortunately dropped their 5th straight game.
Did they end up losing? Yeah, I didn't look. Got another.
Swept by the Rays.
Gene B. Kim slid into the DMs. He had another $10,000 hit today.
Yeah, he was leading. Last I saw, he was leading in this FanDuel afternoon slate as well.
Oh, jeez.
The one that hadn't closed yet. I don't know if he's still there, but I'll tell you in half a second. I know it isn't me.
An absolute monster. He's on a heater and a half.
Looks like he didn't hold on. Dropped the 14th. The 240-point lineup, though. I mean, that's a killer fantasy. That's a killer FanDuel lineup. It's just people got out to 268 now.
Did you? So I was looking at somebody was doing some screenshots of what they had done in the NHL channel. So I looked at today and I was like, oh my God, that contest is so top heavy. And I went and looked at today's $10,000 to first on DK, $100 to ninth.
Are you serious?
That might as well be a winner take all.
Why don't they just make it a winner take all at that point? It's like so. That's so shitty.
Yeah, because I think it's like a $15 contest. So like even if you got ninth, you're not even paying for half your entries.
Right. That's awful. Awful. There's no appeal to it.
No.
And yet that's the kind of contest I would throw money at all this. Yeah, you were my definitely whenever I got contest selection questions, bankroll management questions, I was just giving the ask EMac.
Yeah, I've been getting a few from that channel, so.
Yeah. Be wise. I like that channel. I think it's working out well. Just having that little space for people to ask like easy questions since they might be worried about asking in like the more brutal channels.
Oh, you've got NBA and NHL tomorrow. Plus, you're riding baseball.
I do. Yep. Writing baseball, writing basketball, NHL show, NBA show. I'm not sure if the NHL schedule changes yet or not, though. We got a message about it.
Oh, you're on with Josh. You don't do that many shows with Josh.
Sounds like, yeah, no, we haven't been on a lot together. But yeah, it should be fun. I don't know who I'm filling in for. They DM me and ask me if I scrape. This song sounds like it's out of like a David Caruso sex thriller from the late 90s. Like Jade.
The steel drum.
Yeah. You just see David Caruso like in sunglasses.
All right, Awesemo, here we go. It's your old pal EMac coming to you with T McBee as we get ready for the NBA Deeper Dive. 2 hours of content for our 5 games tonight. We have 3 games going off relatively early, and then you've got that late night hammer. It's an island game all the way out at 10 o'clock. Thankfully, we should have all Oh wait, it's the Clippers. We won't have all the news before tip-off. Hell, we may not even have the news after tip-off. But here we are. It's a Sunday fun day, Terry. How have you been?
Doing well. It's been a fun weekend of just watching sports and doing my thing at the site and everything. But yeah, just living and breathing this stuff all day long. And today, like I was saying before the show, it was fun. I was watching my last place in the American League Yankees lose, but I got to see a little bit of the Knicks game, and they held on. Rangers are winning right now, so hopefully we'll go 2 for 3 in New York sports. Otherwise, yeah, just living in this basketball slate, which might be the ugliest slate of the year. It's already
there.
I just do not like this slate at all. There's like just looking at some of the options, particularly on FanDuel, where you get like such limited choices at each position. It's just ugly.
And that's where we'll talk a little bit about some of the game theory as we go through this, because there are some risky plays, but then you look like De'Aaron Fox at his price point. Spoiler alert, we're going to talk about him on FanDuel. He has like a 6% chance of exceeding his boom score, a 50% chance of falling below his bust score. But the other options there are not exactly having me do cartwheels. All of a sudden in FanDuel, where you have to do the game within the game, playing each position and making decisions there, it's all of a sudden you're like, wait a second, that maybe he is the right play, even with all that mess.
And it's difficult to spend all your salary and spend it well. Like I found myself, I was just hand building lineups, a little bit before the show. And I just found myself landing on like kind of clunky plays if we're looking at our boom score probability, our optimal lineup rate, the different things in the boom buzz tool. And it's just difficult to spend money in the right way. We're on a lineup that I think is good. Like the placeholder I've got sitting in there, I spent my money. I went to high upside, but I just don't like it. Like I don't like the lineup ultimately. And it's, I don't know. Just one of those slates.
All right. So Ted Nugent in there, our old pal EMac. When we hear his name, everybody gets a little less tame. Okay. All right. Little plot twist there at the end. Nice. That's a good one. Hit that like button, fellas. We're gonna have some fun here today. I want to look and see. Let's see. Gene B. Kim is an amazing player. He's had a nice little baseball day here, but I got to look at a Slack chat because I missed a premium question last week. We barely touched on it. So I just wanted to see, I'll do a call out now and see if the person is in chat, but we'll talk about it at some point. But if Caleb McCain is in chat, make your presence known, because I've got your question saved from last Saturday or Sunday, and I will talk about that as well. All right, we have our 5 games here. We are sponsored by No House Advantage tonight. So the fun deal over there is if you use the promo code Awesemo, they'll match you up to $20 with your first deposit there. They are putting a whole new twist on things. It's player props with a DFS twist. So what we're doing is we're not playing against the house. These are static lines that we're making decisions on, and then we're playing against other gamers, head-to-heads, GPPs, 50-50s, etc., the usual formats that we're used to. But basically what you do is you choose 10 questions from the sometimes as many as 200 or 300 that they have posted, and it's player props. So you decide if it's going to be over or under. Pretty simple. And then you rank your 10 with confidence points, 10 for the most confident, 1 for the least confident. And then how you do on those questions ends up being your score. So they're generally using overlays, a little bit of a marketing strategy. And we've had quite a few people find success over there. We're offering free projections every day for their site. And we've also built out the top optimal lineups for you to show you what they should look like based upon the probability of actual occurrence. So we're doing all the heavy lifting for you. They're giving you $20 to start. Go check out No House Advantage. Well worth it. I can't get to them in Virginia. I'm very sad about that. But
that sucked.
But when I travel to Ohio in 2 weeks, I may sign up there.
There you go. That's fun. What do you got? That little half marathon trip coming up?
I do, up to Canton.
There you go.
Know what's in Canton?
Well, that's fun.
Pro Football Hall of Fame. I've never been.
Yeah. Oh, so very cool.
I'm going out there for my birthday. My wife somehow is, hey, we're going to go do a half marathon in honor of your birthday. Gee, thanks. This sounds like fun. We're going to Canton, Ohio. Woohoo! But I've never been to the Pro Football Hall of Fame, so I'm actually looking forward to it.
That's cool.
Nice. Yeah, and then and instead of like the races, you all get medals for them, and they're all kind of bling. They're funny. You get like a big championship ring or something for this one, or a Hall of Fame ring or something like that. I'm like, oh, okay, well let's go see this. It'll be fun. But yeah, Milestone birthday. It's a big round one. So here we go.
Turning 30, everybody are.
Yeah, turning 30.
A little friend EMac, turning 30.
I wish. All right, well, let's jump on in here. Let's get going. A lot of this is going to be straightforward, and then a lot of it is going to be crystal ball time. So we sort of run the gamut. With Portland going into Charlotte here, they're actually 4-point road favorites. Now, Charlotte is without LaMelo Ball. He's done for the rest of the season. Gordon Hayward is out. We don't know about PJ Washington yet, who's dealing with an ankle injury. You've got Devontae Graham, who was out the last game. He's got a quad issue. And then, not to bury the lead, but Damian Lillard is out with a hamstring issue in this one. So with all of the injuries that CJ McCollum has had this year, he has only, and Lillard has only missed 3 games. McCollum's only been available for 2 of them. In those 2 games, he's averaging 26 field goal attempts, Terry. I like the volume here. Talk to us about the Trailblazers.
Yeah, I think that's the spot, right? If we're going to something, it's in particular on FanDuel, it's 7,900. The way I'm seeing that's too low for CJ McCollum with Damian Lillard. Without Damian Lillard, I think that's a smash spot. So that just makes a ton of sense to me. He's going to have every opportunity to take all the shots that he wants. His assist rate goes up a little bit in the situation. He'll be playing alongside like Anthony Simons, Norman Powell, Carmelo Anthony. It's not playing alongside Damian Lillard, unfortunately, but he'll be able to make that up in just taking more shots and having more usage for himself. I think it makes a ton of sense at 8,700 on the DK slate as well. He's going to be popular on both sites. He's coming in slightly negatively leveraged, but I think you can plow through that even for a higher price on the DraftKings slate. And then even at, in a mid-40s mark on popularity on FanDuel, which is around even leverage, I think I want to be well beyond the field on him. I think it just makes a ton of sense in a spot that's not going to offer much resistance in terms of defense, and a spot that they should be running up and down the court all day long. Yeah, I want to take CJ McCollum here all day long. We said all day long twice in a row. And I'll take,
You're saying all day long. Oh no, I just did it too. Dad joke.
Look at you go. Anyway, I think Anthony Simons is definitely interesting for $4,000 on the FanDuel slate, and definitely on the 3,600 both guard spots on the DraftKings slate. Just immense utility, and the public not nearly catching up to that one. So for a very good value spot, I think Anthony Simons is definitely in play. You can get to Norman Powell. I think Carmelo Anthony is a little bit interesting. The centers are kind of limited, just in the fact that they're basically splitting the minutes, kind of cannibalize one another. So I think if I was choosing one, I would go to Nurk, but I don't love either one of them.
All right. So here's the interesting thing is what with Norman Powell, he's not appearing well in the boom bust tool, and I couldn't really figure out why. And that was something I don't know if you had noticed that. Did you? Is it just because it's an elevated price point? I mean, it's not. So we'll talk about the boom bust tool. So basically what that does is it's a probability of someone booming or busting. Boom is 5x salary plus 10. Bust is 5x salary or below. So it just means it's not going to be, it's either going to be, it's going to help you win a tournament, or it's going to hurt you. And then we compare that to the player's popularity, the ownership of it. And from there, that's the leverage score, plus or minus. Where's the field against the likelihood of secret option 4, the likelihood of the player being in the optimal lineup for whichever site we're looking at. Today, because there's only 5 games, the scores for people being in the optimal lineups are a little bit higher than what we would normally see on an 8 or a 9 or a 10 game slate. But he was someone that I thought would be in a more intriguing spot here, but that one kind of caught me off guard a little.
So it depends on, I guess, which is your metric of choice, right? And which is the site that you're looking at. He's at the same price on both sites, 6,300, but that's a different price, of course, on DraftKings against a lower overall cap. But you do get him with multi-position eligibility between both guard and forward positions over there. So he does have a lot of utility. So he comes up in the optimal lineup still 14.2% of the time in the most recent simulation. So I have this sorted to the FanDuel small forward. So we're missing a fair amount of guys, but that's still a top, let's call it 5 when we include those other guys, top 5 or 6 among guys eligible at the small forward on DraftKings. On the FanDuel slate, he ranks 3rd in that category. So he's actually pretty good in terms of the amount that he's appearing in the optimal lineup. What I don't love is the boom score probability, which is where you started, and which is to answer your question, I think it's just related to the salary. 6,300. He's a bit of a high variance kind of a guy, and it's just I think we're in a spot where the situation is going to create enough upside where he's maybe a little bit more likely than that. But I think for that salary, it's just what's limiting the overall numbers on this, particularly on the DraftKings slate, where again you're seeing that against a lower cap, so it's an 8.7% boom score probability. On the FanDuel slate, where that's a different ratio of salary to cap, it's a 15% boom score probability. So I think it's just all about how he fits in for the money, and particularly against some of these other plays. But he is still coming up as one of the more optimal guys, particularly on the blue side.
All right, let's see. Anything else from the Portland side here? The only thing the one concerning thing is potentially Anthony Simmons' minutes, because they have a lot of wing type players still available in Portland. So he's not a perfect plug and play by any stretch, because there are alternative options that they could go to. But I like him the best as one of the better producers as compared to Jones, or different position but same idea of Covington and Carmelo, whomever else. He has just a little bit better per minute rate. The wild card is going to be the minutes, because this is not necessarily a slam dunk. Getting to our next question, we have game time decisions here with the Devontae Graham and with PJ Washington. If they're out, one of the Martin twins will probably start. Jordan, did you know they're twins that play for the team? Identical to Jordan loves this one. So the opposite Martin twins started. I don't think it really matters. Their minutes are going to be incredibly wild. They are not slam dunks by any stretch as well, even though they're discounted. Who knows what they're going to get in their minutes? We've seen, was it 3 games ago, Caleb Martin broke the slate with 40 whatever DK points. And then the last game, his brothers started over him, but they both played 30-ish minutes. So I don't know what to do here with Charlotte. So here's the uncertainty. And then they started, I think they started a rookie in the last one. I meant to pull up that box score as well. But what do you, let's assume both players play. What do you think is the likelihood?
Are you thinking of Vernon Carey?
Yes, Vernon Carey. Thank you.
Yeah, he was the other name on the board. I don't want either Martin or Vernon Carey, either of the Martins or Vernon Carey. But if they're rendered relevant by news, which would be no Devontae Graham, no PJ Washington, then yeah, they're going to be slate relevant. There's just, this is the issue when we were talking about it before the show. It's just a weird broken slate in that there's value everywhere. Everybody on the board, for the most part, is in the mid-range in salary on both sites, including some of the better players that are available from these teams. There's just not much to choose from. It's just a really weird slate. So you don't specifically need like a Caleb Martin at 3,900 if he happens to be starting and projected for 32 minutes, but he's going to project as pretty good value and look pretty good and come up in a decent amount of the optimal lineups. I think we're just going to start seeing, if we get that news, we'll start seeing just a big plateau of guys that are coming up the same amount optimal, because all the prices are going to be the same on a lot of these value plays. The range of outcomes is going to be spectacularly wide. So I would just start grabbing different combinations of a lot of these guys if we're projecting them out similarly, given that news. I think the slate changes around what happens with Graham and Washington here. It definitely has a good impact on Terry Rozier and Miles Bridges at the top of this team, which is a lot more predictable, a lot more viable. You're paying a reasonable 7,500 for Rozier at the top. He is already coming up a decent amount optimal, getting a lot of ownership though. 8,300 at both guard spots on DK. Same story. He's getting a ton of attention. He comes up less optimal at that price as well. So I would be concerned about it more over there. And then Bridges gets a lot more relevant. He's a 0.85 fantasy point per minute producer across all situations, but that jumps up over 1. I have it in the deep dive. That jumps to 1.0 exactly. So not over 1, excuse me. He jumps to exactly 1.0 fantasy points per minute when he's in this situation, if Washington and Graham both sit. So there's just a ton of utility in those two, in addition to all these ridiculous value guys that we don't necessarily need. And Vernon Carey would be in that situation as well, at 4,000 from the power forward, 3,700 at center on DK. His value would shoot up a little bit if he jumps into the starting lineup if Washington's sitting. So there's just question marks all over the board with this one. Somebody's going to be valuable here. It's difficult to nail down without that news.
So I just was quickly looking at some Vernon Carey stuff here because I did not know who he was, and that's how deep the Hornets have been going in their rotation. So he was their second round draft pick this year. He did one and done from Duke, and he's been in the G League. So he played, it's called his G League stats. He played 14 games in the G League this year, averaged 26 minutes per game, 16 points, 55% from the field. He's obviously playing closer to the bucket, and 9.4 rebounds. So not bad at all. And he's made 11 appearances thus far in this season. However, that one start was really the only notable time because he's average even with that. So let me put it this way: 3 minutes, 1 minute, 1 minute, 4 minutes, 7 minutes, 3 minutes, 2 minutes, 1 minute, 3 minute, 34 minutes. So he got half his minutes in the last game. But it's one of those that's sort of like, okay, I really don't know what to expect. Now, the tricky part with him is we're going to have Yusuf Nurkic and his Cantor on the other side. He's only 6'9". He's not exactly a big guy. So if he's playing in the post, but I don't know what that does with Biyombo. I don't know what that does with Zeller. I would assume those guys are going to be the ones going against Nurkic. Cantor, I don't think it really matters who's going against him from that standpoint. But that's just kind of a weird one. So hopefully PJ Washington is playing tonight.
That would make it easier. Yeah, that would definitely make it easier. And they become, that's how we've got it laid out right now in the Boom Busto, at least as of my last update. And they're all essentially like flat value and around the right ownership, around the right prices for that situation. So it really swings on that news. PJ would be PJ would be a lot more interesting on DK, where he's only 5,300. I forgot about that detail. 6,300 is the right price for him on FanDuel. 53 between power forward and center. I think if he goes, he would have value there on the DK slate.
And I'm just looking. So even in the last game, Biyombo played 8 minutes and was Zeller a DMP? I didn't know he was hurt.
Yeah, I forget if he straight up didn't go, but
okay. And he's been dealing with some injury. Oh yeah, he was a healthy DMP. Okay. Right. Interesting. Wow. All right.
Yes, so I didn't realize, I guess, that Carey was a Duke kid. I knew he was a second round pick, which typically doesn't scream like this is a guy that we need to get in there and develop, but this isn't really that situation either. This is more injury replacement and just filling in for a bunch of guys that are, likely to be out and a bunch of guys that are already on the shelf. So the fact that he went to Duke suggests, maybe a higher end pedigree. I have to admit, I don't know much about the kid at all, but that could, make him a little bit more interesting if we do get that news, makes him a more interesting basketball player, I guess, in my mind and in just the way I think about him. So there's that.
Let's head on to our next game here. We've got Houston at Orlando. No John Wall tonight, plus the cast of thousands, literally, of players that are still hurt. Obviously, Dante Exum, Daniel House, David Nwaba, Sterling Brown, Eric Gordon. Those guys they're out for a few more games at a minimum. But Wall is now dealing with a sore Achilles. So, he had the ruptured Achilles that cost him about 2 years of playing time. He's had the knee issues. And this is a lost season. So the interesting thing here is Orlando is favored by 1. 219 over under. Orlando will be without Michael Carter-Williams, James Ennis, who I was expecting to play. So he is out. I think he has a hamstring injury. And then Mo Bamba is questionable. So what do we do with this one? We go to Kevin Porter Jr. So in his 187 minutes that he has played with John Wall, he is averaging 0.68 FanDuel points per minute. Terry, that's no bueno. Without Wall, he's averaging 1.04. His usage rate goes from just under 20% to 27%. The assist rate more than doubles from 15% to 38%. So that's where his fantasy points are coming. He's kind of ball dominant, and then he'll get more field goals attempts. Here's the interesting thing about Orlando, though. They've turned over their entire roster. All their key good defensive players have been hurt or are not playing right now. And in their last 8 games, they are allowing an average of 120 points to their opponents. This feels like there's some fantasy goodness to be found. I'm not liking many of the names. We're down to Kevin Porter Jr., Christian Wood I'm okay with. I'd rather play Kelly Olynyk for the price savings over Christian Wood. I think they have similar upside. Wood is definitely the more steady producer, but Kelly Olynyk's like, I'm going to get playing time. I'm going to rack up stats. This is awesome.
Yeah.
And he is.
And now he's $6,300 Kelly Olynyk on FanDuel. Who's like $3,800 like a few weeks ago. But I'm just looking at it just because it struck me funny. On DK, the average salary for all players across this entire game is $4,600. On FanDuel, the average salary for players in this game is also $4,600. It's just absurd. It just slots into exactly what I was talking about before. Christian Wood is $8,000 in this game. The highest salaried Orlando player is Wendell Carter at $6,400. Terrence Ross is $51,000. Kevin Porter 65. Like all these guys that do have value on this slate are from the mid-range or even the low end. It's just difficult to spend your money in the right way on this slate without going to some of the offbeat, spend up options that aren't necessarily coming up optimal. It's just kind of one of those nights where you might go to those guys just with the consideration that I need to get raw points from somewhere. So I'm thinking of, Karl Anthony Towns, for example, wasn't coming up extremely optimal for FanDuel just because he's at like 11,000 or something. You might just have that money to spend so you can just kind of plug it in and not worry about the various optimal rates, boom score probability and such, just because we've got so much value. So yeah, I think Christian Wood is extremely interesting. Doesn't look like he's getting enough ownership on either site based on the boom bust tool and based on what Alex sees for him. He has a 28.2% usage rate in this situation, leads the team. His actual fantasy point production drops a little bit from 1.23 per minute to 1.14, but it was small-ish kind of a sample, and I think there's just significant upside, significant run, and the salary is right, so I'm good going there. Another guy who jumps up in value is Jayshawn Tate. He goes from a 0.86 per minute producer to a 1.02 without this set of teammates, 22.4% usage rate. He's getting ownership. Wood is definitely getting some significant ownership, but for Wood in particular, like I was saying, the field is just behind him. He's got an over 10 leverage score on FanDuel, pretty significant 5-ish leverage score on DK. Every reason in the world to go to those guys. Kevin Porter Jr., you ran him down, but he is right there as well. I can even throw Avery Bradley into the mix for $3,500 on FanDuel, $3,500 on DK, where he gets both shooting guard and small forward eligibility. Kelly Olynyk, like you mentioned, has been producing like crazy in these situations. He comes up as a how does Olynyk now come up in my search? Like you would think that combination of letters wouldn't have hit anything else. He's averaged 1.18 fantasy points per minute since joining the Rockets. Without Wall on the court, it does dip to 1.02 is what I had, but we just know there's upside there. And even though the salary is weird and wrong, he's had a 68% true shooting percentage on the Rockets. It just kind of draws the eye, and it makes sense, like you said, to maybe gives him some shares at a lower raw ownership total than his teammate Christian Wood here.
All right, now we get a little crazy, Terry, because we're going to have to pick some of these players from Orlando to complete our lineups. So
I was hoping if I talked about the Rockets for long enough, you would forget that and we could just move on.
I was trying to. It did not work. I'm wearing my University of Washington Husky, one of my t-shirts today. Terrence Ross went to University of Washington. Hey, so did Markelle Fultz. One's not playing tonight. The other I don't want to play. So no thank you to Terrence Ross for me. Cole Anthony, I'm a little intrigued by him. He's back after his he missed basically 2 months. He's now played 7 games since returning from his layoff. He has scored 20 fantasy points in all of them, and in this stretch is averaging about 27 fantasy points. So he moved back into the starting lineup with Michael Carter-Williams out. I'm assuming that maintains tonight. I'm okay with him there. The guy that I'm very intrigued by, and I can't believe it because I wrote him up as a bust play multiple times at the beginning of the season, Wendell Carter Jr. Who knew if he got steady minutes and wasn't screwed around, that he could get out there and put up some points. 35, 47, 31 DK points in his last 3. Best part is he's taken 11, 12, and 16 field goal attempts, averaging 10 rebounds in that stretch as well, with 12, 9, and 8. So I kind of like Wendell Carter Jr. However, there are some other center options that I would prefer to go to first, but he's the one guy that I guess does stand out amongst Orlando. Fortunately, on Yahoo and DK, we can play multiple centers. FanDuel, you got to kind of pick your poison. How are you looking at him on the blue side tonight?
Yeah, another guy that kind of from that mid-range, that is actually by the optimal lineup rate, I think by boom score probability, as of the last time I checked, that is your leading center option. It's just weird. The way I wrote it up in the boom bust, or in the boom bust, excuse me, the way I wrote it up in the deep dive was kind of an open letter to the people at FanDuel who, if they're listening, when Wendell Carter Jr. is your most frequently optimal center, maybe it's time to start considering multi-position eligibility. It's just frustrating to have such limited options at the position, but I think he's going to be very, very relevant. Alex has him at a 30-minute projection, which makes a ton of sense. He's not getting ownership in line with the optimal lineup rate that we've got on either site. So he's got a nice little leverage score at the salary and at the possibility for upside, the production that we've seen from him so far. I think it makes a ton of sense to go there. I just think he's very much in play as a DFS play, regardless of, what people may or may not think of him as an NBA player so far. The Magic got him for a reason. He was the primary return in that trade for Nikola Vucevic. So it makes sense that they're going to want to throw minutes at him, develop him up. He's been a 1.18 fantasy point per minute producer across all situations since he arrived in Orlando. I just think there's plenty of upside there. So yeah, he's definitely on the board for me. Cole Anthony, like you said, is got back into the starting lineup as of that was Friday night, I think. And he saw, 29 minutes that night, put up a 29 minutes, 24.6% usage. Put up 19 real points, 7 rebounds, 5 assists. Solid little fantasy game. If he comes anywhere near that at 5,800 on DraftKings, 5,000 on FanDuel, there's a ton of upside available there. I think Terrence Ross, I'm willing to go to, just given the range of outcomes, GPP type play, and the fact that he does not have enough ownership on him for the upside at 5,100 on FanDuel. If you wanted to maybe duck and dive around him with all the similar values from 5,900 between both guard and forward on DK, I wouldn't necessarily blame you, but it does look like he's got a little bit of room for additional shares beyond where the public is on him. And I'm a sucker sometimes for those, heat check type scorers. And if he starts lighting it up, we've seen him run away from the field on certain nights. He has not been doing it as frequently as you would like him to this year, and it doesn't make for a comfortable play. He has been, second on the team over the course in usage over the course of the season. He's averaging 0.89 fantasy points per minute overall. So it's second on the team with this expected set of teammates off 26% usage, putting up just 0.82 fantasy points per minute while he's getting that additional usage, because he's got a 44.2% true shooting percentage in the situation, which is ugly, especially for a volume shooter like that. You want him to be significantly better than that. So, yeah, if he's shooting, we want it. If he's hitting that shot, it's going to have value. It's just an uncomfortable play to get to him. And then the mix and match types.
The midway point, get us up to 250 likes. We'll throw out some ownership percentages here. I'll drop some head-to-heads in the chat. In the meantime, I'm going to drop the Fred Van Elite Fan Club contest link into the YouTube chat. You can also find that on my pinned tweet on Twitter. How do you participate in this one? Well, it's over on DK. It costs $1. 75 people are in it. The person who wins, if they have an Awesemo avatar, get 30 free days of Awesemo premium content. Easy peasy. That's a $90 added value onto your prize there. How do you get the Awesemo avatar? Well, I'm glad you asked, because I just dropped that link into chat as well. If you rep the Awesemo avatar, or rocket as the promo says, in any other contest with 5,000 people or more, and you finish top 3, you earn yourself 30 free days of Awesemo premium content. I think it's a little easier to do the Fred Van Elite fan club. I have to play Fred Van Vliet or his direct backup. Kelly Sullivan just gives us a super chat. Are we starting James Watts tonight? What are the best Portland plays? Well, we hit on Portland up front. You can always hit that little rewind button. We've got the little down the side tells you which game we're on for the run sheet. But McCollum is number one. Anthony Simmons probably number two. To answer his other question, what was it? James Watts. Who the hell is James Watts?
I was hoping you would know.
I am now going to have to.
I assumed you were in on the joke and you were trying to trick me again.
I don't know who that is. Oh, all right. Well, there you go.
I'm curious. Question for you: Who were you considering Fred VanVleet's direct backup with all of the Toronto Raptors out?
So technically, it's not Malachi Smith. I don't think so. I think I have to go with.
It's definitely not Malachi Smith.
Sorry, it's not Malachi Flynn either. I think I have to play Bembry, but I don't know. That's a great question. It's hard to tell. Basically, the spirit of it is I kind of take the worst option.
Yeah,
that's there. So it's supposed to be a thing for me, not for me. Basically contributing an easy victory towards the rake for all of you guys in the contest. So I'm not trying to take the best play here. I just it's hard to tell who his direct backup is when 4 of the starters are out.
In addition to not knowing who the direct backup necessarily is with this mix of players, I also don't necessarily know which one the worst option is. Could it be Yuta Watanabe? Sure.
That's who I don't want to play, but I have played him before in this little version of the contest as well. 2 years ago, I was playing Jeremy Lin at times. So, yeah, this is why you jump in the Fred VanVleet fan club. It's a good way for you guys to win. 7 spots left in that one, so it's got a fill to run. But that Awesemo avatar deal, that's a nice one out there. Because you get a nice little bonus. Not only did you win a contest, you also get 30 free days of Awesemo Premium. All right. Well, we tried to not talk about it, but now we're going to talk about it. Mike Piscala out. I can't look at it. Pokashevsky is going to be starting. He is available. Lujan Dortz, game time decision. We don't know for sure what's happening there. Pokashevsky has missed a couple of games in the last few. I think he was dealing with a hip injury. And then Dort, out of nowhere, in his last 2 games, has 51 combined field goal attempts. He scored 42, I think it was 42 NBA points a couple games ago, but he is questionable. It'll be a game time decision. Of course, we're still no Shea Gilgeous-Alexander. He's dealing with plantar fasciitis. And then, Al Horford is not going to play the rest of the season. So we're looking at a pretty thin OKC group. On the other side, we sort of said no Fred VanVleet, no Pascal Siakam, Kyle Lowry out, OG Anunoby out, and Jalen Harris also out. Gary Trent is available. Now, the interesting thing here, so a lot of times I don't like when teams are this just down to the bare bones. However, because I'm worried about the offense not really being coherent and just it being a sloppy game. These 2 teams have been playing with that personnel for quite some time. They've gotten to a point where they're kind of functional. Their value plays, I don't feel good about any one of them, but I'm okay. I don't want to point to and say it's this guy, but there's a few. Well, I'm going to point to one and say it's Kem Birch for me. That's the one I like.
Wow. Well, that's a comfy play. You are definitely nobody can accuse you of not being out on a limb for sure. But I think it makes some sense, right? Let me drop this last update in here and just get the minutes back.
Yeah. So while you're running that, he's 4,600 on DK. His price is coming up a little bit. I think he's still like 11 on Yahoo. He's a nice deal there. He is center only on Yahoo, but we can play too. You can pair him with Chris Boucher as well. But he started alongside Boucher the last couple games. He's started the last 2, 26, 29, and then off the bench, he had 25 minutes. He's been relatively solid. I mean, he's always around the basket, picks up a handful of rebounds, usually gets 10, 15 points, and then you're hoping that he gets some steals or blocks. And that's really the hallmark of his game. It's not overly trustworthy, but of all of them, he's the one guy that I think even if the offense is struggling, that's not going to overly impact him. There's still going to be missed shots that he can get rebounds on, and he can steal and block. So of all the guys, he's the one I trust the most, in my opinion. And he's not in the inner circle of trust by any stretch.
See, I think I'm more inclined to, and I agree with everything you said on the stability of the counting stats. And there is some upside, particularly, 4,500 is not a big price to pay, particularly at the power forward on FanDuel today, which is true just of every position on FanDuel today. It's a ridiculous slate. 4,600 on DK. I think there maybe are better options, but I agree. He's definitely very much in play based on, he doesn't have to do much and he's going to be able to accrue counting stats. I do think just grabbing some of like the range of outcome type scoring types like a Gary Trent could have value here, although I don't love the price at 6,100 on FanDuel. He's a lot more interesting to me for 56 at both shooting guard and small forward on DK. So I would like to get to him over there. And it looks like the public is going to be behind the curve on him. And that's kind of true for what we've got for everybody at the top of the board for the Raptors right now in terms of the DK slate. Like Malachi Flynn is projecting for a significant optimal lineup appearance rate, but the public is way behind the curve. Same story for Chris Boucher. You're talking about options with a lot of volatility. You're talking about, like, we've seen Chris Boucher go pop in really chalky spots a few times already this season. And we know that they like to yank his minutes back and forth. But I think in this situation, like, he's just going to have to be out there for a pretty big chunk of the game, unless he gets in a ton of foul trouble or something. So I think there's significant upside that the public isn't getting to so far in that. And then, we were jokingly mentioning them before, but I think like Yuta Watanabe, Paul Watson, these guys are in play as well, at least as mix-ins on FanDuel. And then for 3,600 and for 3,700 respectively on DK, they're firmly on the board too, when we start to consider the optimal lineup appearance rate and everything. So there's a lot of value and a lot of utility here. It's just another spot where, like, if we're spending 4,000 and 3,000 and even into the 5s and 6s on this team, like, where are we going to spend all this salary that we're saving on this slate? There's just not a lot of options. So it's just interesting with, how things come together. I think it's a great slate to just, like I said earlier, just combine a lot of different put together a lot of different combinations of guys from among these more optimal plays, and just kind of ignore teams and spots like the entire Oklahoma City team here. I honestly want no part of anyone on that team.
No, it's hard to trust. I don't even know what they're going to do. So, I mean, Theo Maladon, okay, maybe. Ty Jerome, he's $10 on Yahoo. Maybe we really need some of those guys to be. We need Dort to be out really for Kenrich Williams to see enough minutes to do some stuff, maybe some things. Yeah, he's not very exciting. Pokashevsky, he's going to have an insane usage rate, but he could also go, 3 for 14 from the field tonight and get 17 total fantasy points. So
say that much.
Yeah.
We know he's available, but like, we've got him projected at 27 minutes. Would it shock you if he played 22?
No.
18, right? I mean, I just don't think there's any stability here. I think Basley's a little bit stable. We've got him at a 31-minute projection, but he's salaried appropriately. Like, there's no real upside in him for 5,500 on this slate or 6,000 on this slate. Like, I just don't see it. So when I say I don't want any part of these guys, I would take every one of these players that we've mentioned so far in, mix and match type roles. I would even throw Svi into that as just a tournament dart throw, a guy with, some scoring upside for 3,700 on the FanDuel slate. Not a ton of appearances in our optimal lineup, but there's a chance. And when you're going with a slate like this on a 5-gamer, again, you don't need that salary, but it's a spot where, like, the public won't really be there when everybody's only spending that kind of salary at a bunch of these different positions. I think it makes sense to start mixing and matching some of these lesser owned guys.
I'm old enough to remember when Moses Brown had a 20 rebound game, 23 actually. That was just 3 weeks ago. So for those of you wondering why, we're not really bringing him up, one, it costs you your center spot, and two, there is no stability. So he had that game where, like, oh my God, he's redefining the position. This is amazing. 50 fantasy points. Since then, 24, 38, 13, 28, 20, 18, 31, 13, 37, 40, 25. That's all over the place. He's similarly priced to Wendell Carter Jr. I'd rather play Wendell Carter Jr. Than him. So, it's just one of those where it's like, great. There are players that are getting minutes that are not expensive on a per minute, $1 per minute basis. Their fantasy production, it's off the charts.
Yeah, and look, you do like to, especially in GPPs, you like to capture that range of outcomes, which is why I'm saying these guys would be mix and match options for me. There's just nobody I'm going out of my way for, I guess would have been a better phrasing of
Yes.
what I said coming into this team. They're all on the board in limited fashion, so they mix in well as dart throws. But yeah, to your point with Moses Brown in particular, with a 26-minute projection, he just doesn't, for 5,700 as my only center on FanDuel. I feel like I can do better. So it's just a matter of I'll take some shares, but I would probably trail the field even at his 7%. But if you wanted to go, 1.5x that, that's easy enough. If you wanted to go double that, that's easy enough. So I wouldn't blame anyone for doing that. And it could be a tournament winning play. If the kid gets 32 minutes tonight, he could have another monster rebounding game or something and break the slate. Like, it's in play that would happen. So yeah, we do want to capture range of outcomes.
All right, on to our next game. This game, despite your first thought, Sacramento and Dallas may not have the fantasy goodness that we are hoping for. It's going to be a little tricky to identify. Luka Doncic, go look at his game logs. He's playing about 4 less minutes per game than when he was rolling out those very heavy minutes. The price really hasn't come down. Yes, he's still, I haven't looked in a couple days. He's first or second in the league in usage. Right up there with Bradley Beal, and I think Jokic is the other one that's right up near the top. So that part hasn't really changed, but he's kind of existing. We are not seeing that 50 fantasy point upside, that 60 fantasy point upside. So that's a little hard to go for. Why is that? Well, Kristaps Porzingis is becoming more involved in the offense, which is good for the Mavs and good for their hopes for the postseason, but not as good for us in the daily fantasy world. Porzingis's price has come up a fair amount. Don't really know what to do with him. So these are both guys where I want to play them. I don't confidently know which one I like more, but this is, like we've been saying, and just to echo what Terry said, this is a slate where you really can just kind of mix and match and go with the shotgun approach. It's not overly large. Despite all of the people being hurt, there's nobody that's falling into this guy's got to play 36, 37 minutes. That doesn't exist, which is crazy to say. But who's the good guys to pay up for? Well, we haven't really mentioned any other than maybe CJ McCollum at this point. So those guys are really the only two I'd be interested in here for the Mavericks. On the other side, we have Sacramento. Now, you think of Dallas as like a freewheeling team, right? Do you realize over their last 10 games, they are playing at the second slowest pace in the league?
I did not realize that, actually.
Shocked the hell out of me when I saw that. I'm like, because I wanted to look and see why, because we're going to talk about De'Aaron Fox. Why is he coming up on the bust probability so much here, particularly on FanDuel? So one, his price, he's 9,700 on FanDuel. That's just, it's huge. It's not the best matchup, as it turns out, because Dallas is playing slower. While he does have a 21% chance of making the optimal lineup, a lot of that's based on raw points. Maybe we want to go there. We're going to have money to spend. Where are we going to spend it? He could be one of them. However, there's only a 6% chance that he exceeds 5x his salary plus 10. That's not very much upside. Because of his high salary, there's a 2/3 chance that he falls below his boom threshold or bust threshold of 45 fantasy points. That doesn't feel good either. Now, I still think he's a good player and I like him, but I would like him at about 20% discount to his current salary before I'd be recommending with the old full-throated roar there. What do you want to do with this game? Because is it a Hassan Whiteside kind of night? No Rashawn Holmes. What do we do here? I would normally thought this is going to be where I plant my flag, and I'm like, yet again, I'm not overly excited by any of the guys in this game.
So somebody get me a flag because I'm going to plant it.
All right.
Let's meet recency. This is Luka Doncic at 10-4 on FanDuel, 10-9 on DK, which is still admittedly a high price. This is by far the best player available on the slate. It is absurd not to play him. And if we don't play him, I have no idea how we're spending all our salary. Luka Doncic is the best play on the slate, bar none, period, end of sentence. And now I'll continue. I just think it's ridiculous I understand maybe his minutes have been more limited and all the things that you said. I just don't know where else we're going for major upside, major production, and a slate breaking type play with all the salary we've got to spend. So I think it makes all the sense in the world, and the field is not going to him enough. We've got a major leverage score on him on both sites, and this is Luka Doncic. We have plenty of history to justify the play. I think it makes no sense to skip him. I want to be over the field on him on both sides. Kristaps, I love. I think there's plenty of room for him at only 8,800 on the FanDuel slate. 9,000 is plenty fine on the DK slate. You can roster him at power forward or center over there. I think there's plenty of reason to go to both of them. Richardson, Maxi Kleber, DFS are all just like mix and match type guys for me. Jalen Brunson is kind of interesting on the DraftKings slate. Moving in between both guards spots looks like it gets him enough utility for 4,400. There's value there. Again, it's value I don't know that we need, but it's there. So you could go to that. Did you want to come back at me on the Luka Doncic?
No, I want to come back to chat a little bit. They're saying, do you know about the Sacramento Kings defense? Yes, I absolutely. It's horrible. It's an abomination. It's the worst in the league. I love taking players against Sacramento. I usually like to find 3 or 4 players a slate where I say, this is a guy I want to play. It's going to be my core play. And then I do the core building blocks article, and that's who ends up being in my cash game and all that. I don't have a player on this slate where I'm saying that. Yeah. Is it the Dallas guys I'd like to go to, and Luka in particular? Yes. Absolutely. I agree with you. I think he's probably the best play on the slate. And Paul George is going to be the other one. But there's question marks with both of them. And that's not what I want from my best play. I want, this guy, 50 fantasy points, write it in pen and move on. We don't have that tonight. So that's
right. So that's why, I'm just super willing to die on Luka Doncic Hill tonight. If that's the case. I will go down with the best player of the night, with that ship if I have to. That is just, it's the way I would prefer to go given all this money to spend. If it was a tight salary slate, I would be sitting here saying there are major question marks about Luka Doncic. We can't justify spending that much salary on him given the lack of options, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That is just not the case. We've got savings at every single position. I just don't know where else to go. I think everything you said about De'Aaron Fox on the other side of this one is perfectly on point. He's too high priced at 97 on FanDuel, 98 on DK. Only point guard eligible on DK, so you don't pick up any additional utility over there, which would have helped him. And the slate is right there on the DraftKings ownership and over on the FanDuel ownership. So everybody's willing to pay up for De'Aaron Fox. I think it's partly a product of just we've got all that money to spend, and a lot of the value-based plays are at other positions. So it just seems like a slate where you're paying up at point guard. So people are going to him, but I don't know that he's the best pick at that, even at that, from that perspective. So if given salary to spend, people land on him, and it kind of makes sense that that's the way they're going. But given our rates, I think it makes sense to look in other directions. I'm reluctant to say, even if we're leaving salary on the table, but it's starting to kind of look like that might be a more optimal approach to building.
All right, get that likes up to 250, and we'll get some head-to-heads out there. We'll get some projections, and I won't do any more reads as soon as you guys get to 250. So guess what? It's time for a read. No House Advantage. Let's talk about them just a little bit. I dropped the link into chat. We do offer their free projections for their contests every single day. We also create optimal lineups for you. Pick one of those, put it into their contest, have some fun. It's player prop contest. There is no House Advantage. We're not playing the house. We're going against each other. These are static lines. Once they're released, they're not changed. So you can go look at some of the guys there, like maybe a Gary Trent. If he's up there for a points projection, it probably got a lot better now that they're sitting everybody on Toronto. So that's how you can utilize the news in your favor. You don't want to take the Pascal Siakam under on rebounds. Why? Because he's not playing. So that is going to get you a big fat 0. Your players got to play and or at least be active. If they've been ruled out, then that's a no contest there, or it doesn't count. You're going to get a 0 for that. But definitely go check them out. We get the free projections. Use the promo code Awesemo to get in there with a bonus $20. You put in $20, they'll give you another 20 if you use the promo code Awesemo. So not only are we giving you projections and the lineups, they're paying you to go play on your site. That's No House Advantage, available on any app store as well as at nohouseadvantage.com. Hey, look what happens when people are motivated. We get lots of likes here. Funny how that works. All right.
You don't have to read these things. You can just improv these things if you need to.
Well, the technicalities here. Come on. I was reading that one, but I made it up. I was looking at it, but I said, I'm going to tweak this one a little bit.
You couldn't tell. I always stumble when I actually am trying to read them. I just need to give it a glance beforehand and then just go.
All right, let's have some. Oh, we got 23 more likes, or there's going to be another read here coming up. Anything else from this game before we get to our final one?
I mean, I definitely wouldn't begrudge anybody Harrison Barnes shares.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really want to get to the Buddy Hields and Tyrese Halliburtons of the world, but they're fine as mix-in options, kind of what we talked about before from that mid-range. You mentioned Hassan Whiteside, and I think there's definitely upside there. Most certainly on the board on both sites at the center spot. Just cheap for a guy who is a 1.34 fantasy point per minute producer. We only have him projected for 24 minutes right now, but that's all he needs. If he gets 28, he's going to smash through his ceiling, and I want to be a part of it. So I definitely think there's a lot of room there, and he's not getting owned as much. Common theme, not getting owned as much because he doesn't cost a ceiling spot. So a lot of people are just trying to spend their salary and leaving some of these more optimal plays on the table. So it's really interesting, the shape of this slate.
Yeah. And just to finish up this game, if you are getting players you don't know where you want to go to, this is the game to take players from. I will say that with which ones, that gets a little harder to tell, but these are the functional offenses that currently exist. So I would feel more comfortable from players in this game. I'm not going to name names. There are 10 $1 head-to-heads in the DK lobby, NBA, username EMac, enjoy. All right, final game of the night. This is a late night hammer. We have the 3 games starting at 7, 1 at 7:30, and then all those games are going to be done. We're going to wait about a half hour, and then this game's going to start. So if you have your currently winnings and you don't have anything from this game, I don't know what's going to happen, right? Can you win a tournament without somebody from the last game? I've been told you can't. So we'll see. All right. Karl Anthony Towns, nice play, but we got a bunch of other center options that I like a little bit better. We have all the money in the world. We can spend it. We can go to him. The Clippers, solid defense. I think they're still top 10 in defensive efficiency, depending on what time frame or metric you take. But I don't think Kawhi Leonard is going to play tonight. I think Paul George is going to play tonight, but I don't know because, hey, Clippers. So if you're playing Paul George, you may want to leave enough. So if you have, Paul George is going to be in my cash lineup. That you guys go grab that. You're going to see Paul George. You're going to see probably Porter and probably CJ McCollum. That's going to be kind of my guys. Maybe I'll put Luke in there and bounce one of those other guys. We'll see. I just haven't figured out what I'm going to do yet. But Paul George will be in it. But you want to leave yourself some plans if there's some funny business, because Sundays always seem to be funny business in the NBA. And now we've got the Clippers and no other players to draw from. So my guess is Kawhi sits and George plays. Let's see, 10-point home favorites right now. I don't think that line feels high enough if they were both playing. They don't play again until Tuesday. I don't know why. Till Tuesday, a nice band from the 80s. I just remembered that. Voices Carry was one of their songs. I know I'm completely off the rails.
Yeah,
I don't really like. Yeah, I don't know who else I want to play from the Clippers. Ivica Zubac, sure, but we've already talked about there's at least one good center play from every game, and then now we've got which one of the forwards is going to have a good game. Kawhi really needs to be out for Terrence Mann or for Luke Kennard to be back in the starting lineup. Is that going to happen? Probably, but do I feel great about them? Marcus Morris tends to sit whenever. He tends to be a little more interested than his brother Markieff, but he also has they call it the DGAF gene. I don't know what he feels like he's doing tonight. This would be a fun late night hammer game environment here, but I don't feel great about either side. Lather, rinse, repeat. We've said that about 5 games now.
I think you're going to get the Morris twins and the Martin twins all on the same team. I think that would just be a fun bench.
No Lopi?
The what? Oh,
the Lopi?
I forgot about the Lopi too. Now we're talking about 8 of our spots on the roster, or 6. That might be a little bit much. Excuse me, 6. Yeah, I am stalling for time because I just don't like this game. I agree. Everything revolves around the Kawhi and Paul George situation in the news there. I agree that it's certainly more likely that Paul George plays and Kawhi sits, but I also agree that the opposite is on the table. I think that both of them sitting is certainly on the table. It could be an after lock type situation, or
I
an
want to
after
live before lock with Eric
situation.
Lindquist and watch
Yeah,
his body leave his soul,
this is what
or
I'm
soul
saying.
leave his body once again. Yeah.
This is what I'm saying. Yeah, that's on the board, right? And this is normally a situation where I would be saying, the Clippers don't need these guys to beat a team like the Timberwolves. But like with the rest of this roster, I kind of think they do need these guys to beat this Timberwolves team. It is just like, it's not a good roster after them. So I think guys like Reggie Jackson would certainly be in play. Marcus Morris would be in play. Nick Batum would definitely be in play. He's a guy who comes up a lot for me in that situation where one of the stars is sitting. But I think for me, it's all about whichever of the stars is in the lineup. Based on the way that things are shaped right now, I would love it if we got super late news that it was Kawhi playing and not Paul George, because not enough people would switch to that in time. So if you wanted to build lineups, with that in mind, leaving yourself a shooting guard to flex to on both sites, because Kawhi is more expensive, so you can build him in and then make the late pivot if it's George, but it's at another position. So it's just a little clunky to do construction-wise, but I think that maybe makes a little bit of sense because it is more likely that we get George, who would be in a great, great spot and significantly productive through the year in the situations without Kawhi. So I definitely want to get to that. And then on the other side of this one, there's really not much. It's just kind of a flat team. I will take some shares of Cat just because, again, money to spend, but he's not coming up very much in the optimal lineup rates. He doesn't have a good boom score for the 11,000, the 10-6 on DK. I don't really want much part of D'Angelo Russell on most slates, even when he's getting like full minutes and at 25, a 25-minute projection from Alex at an appropriate price on both sites. Doesn't really interest me. Anthony Edwards is appropriately priced. He's on the board, but he's not really a go-to kind of an option. I would mix him into some shares just for a little differentiation, but it looks like he's getting overowned on both sides. So what are you really changing up? And
Jared Vanderbilt, that's it. That's the only guy that's popping for me.
That's your guy?
He's 11 on Yahoo. He's 3,500 on DK.
I mean, yeah, there's no.
He may be in my cash lineup. You guys grabbed all the cash lineups. People saying that you can't find them. I'm going to put 10 more in right now. But Terry's going to wrap this one up. We're going to turn it over to live before lock, and you guys can have some fun. You got us to the milestone. I didn't do any reads. I'm going to call up quickly the ownership percentages while Terry's talking about this. I'll drop those lineups in there, and then we're going to be gone.
What am I talking about? The fact that you didn't do any reads? So I'm going to just plug something, man? Is that
No. They got to the mark. I'm not going to tell them about UFC 261, the promo code that gets you half off your first month of Awesemo.
Miss out.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm sure that you play, and this is actually not a promo, guys. So I'm just curious. Do you actually follow MMA? Are you a UFC guy? Because I'm not.
No, I don't. I don't like. Okay. I like watching the highlights of whoever of the fights, like if they're crazy, like the flying knee to the face. But I don't like watching people beat the hell out of each other.
That's why I guess I don't follow it enough. Maybe that
I play every slate. I guarantee you that.
Well, that I know. That I know. That's what I was trying to dance around so everybody didn't think we were just doing like a promo here. But like for me, I just find submission holds and stuff boring. So like, yeah, those moments with the flying knees and the Superman punches and stuff are cool, but I just think they're too far between, or at least that's my perception. Not paying for enough of these pay-per-views to really probably know. But it is fun to play DFS, and our tools are pretty killer. Just to throw the plug in anyway. If you guys are actually trying to get better at playing UFC DFS, the Top Fighters tool is pretty killer, and that's all I'll say about it. It's similar to like the other top stacks tools, Boom Bust tool. It's all the same type of utility. Really pretty awesome tool for MMA DFS. I've won money without even knowing anything about the sport. So that's all I'll say. It wasn't an actual plug.
All right, here's your five at each site. Luka Doncic 28, Kevin Porter 28, Paul George 28, Malachi Flynn 27, Chris Boucher 26, Gary Trent 26. Talk about flat ownership. That's what you got. Over on FanDuel, it's Luka at 45, CJ at 44, Porter Jr. at 38, Christian Wood at 38, Malachi Flynn at 37, Paul George at 34. Yahoo, similar story. Chris Boucher at 48. I still like Ken Birch. Christian Wood at 43, CJ McCollum at 36, Paul George at 34, Jashawn Tate pops up there at 33, a name that we didn't hear on the other sites. So there we go. You got it. I got the reads in. Tom's happy. I'm happy. Terry's happy. Hopefully Jordan's happy. He's got one more show to do, and then he can go have some pizza.
I think I'm going to get some pizza too, actually. It's a good idea.
Right. Well, Live Before Lock is up next with Jason, I believe it's Jason Floyd and Eric Lindquist. So enjoy, fellas and ladies. Have fun.
Were those separate thoughts, like the fellas can enjoy and the ladies have to have fun, or like was that just
Oh, I think, well, I hate to not say ladies because, you know, there's like one or two that watch, I think.
Yeah, there's a couple out there. They write in every now and again to the support box like everyone else.
I definitely want to see Eric Lindquist jump on the show, or I want to see a live guerrilla show if Paul George is ruled out tonight.
Don't put that evil on me, Ricky Bobby.
All right, good luck, fellas.
Hey, boys, have a good show.
All right, boys. See ya.
Hey, man.
My guy.
So you ready for that Clipper talk to start the show?
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
All right, Eric, you ready for some Clipper talk? Or are we just going to start writing Clipper talk? Because I know that's your favorite subject to talk about on Live Before Lock.
Yeah, this is really right on brand. Nothing better than a little Clippers talk to get my day going. So excited for them being the only island game for 2.5 hours after lock. That's great.
I know. Obviously we can joke about it, but that was one of the things I was going to ask you. Just your thoughts on what are you doing in terms of potential late swap? Obviously, with Kawhi and Paul George on DraftKings, you put them at utility spot. Save yourself that way. But what's kind of your mentality heading into tonight's slate?
Well, fortunately, I think there are enough studs on the early game that if you want to just not embrace the risk, so be it. But FanDuel is really the difficult one to figure out what to do because Kawhi sits there at 10K. He's by far the best pay-up player at the position, the only pay-up player at the position over there. And so that's where it's really tricky. I think on DraftKings, what I'm doing right now, I just did a build with 49,800 as a cap. So if you're on Fantasy Cruncher and you plug that in, that gives you the $200 that you need in every single lineup for anything that you get that is going to have Paul George in it. You have access, if you want, to be able to go spend up to Kawhi Leonard if he gets ruled in. If he doesn't, you still have Paul George in those number of lineups. I think that's kind of combining what Terry was talking about on the earlier show, where embracing the fact that there is a path to leave salary on the table on this kind of a slate. I think just by making it 49.8 and just being like, look, I'm going to avoid some of those chalkier $50,000 or 49,900 builds on DK by leaving that 200. You have access to Kawhi Leonard if he gets ruled in. Also, I have no idea what the Clippers are going to do. Like, that's just such a it's such a fool's errand to figure out exactly how they're going to handle this. But I know that if Kawhi's in, I want him.
I mean, I just feel like you need to be on from like 9 to 10 o'clock tonight, just so we can see your live reaction of when that lineup comes in.
I was going to say, well, Jordan, did you get new internet? Do I look so lovely today? Is that what it is? I shaved. I went through some kind of a routine this morning. It was Sunday is generally a pretty relaxing day for me, but get to watch a little golf, kind of do the thing. But yes, I got new internet. Maybe the lighting in here is better in my Holiday Inn Express, so I'm ready to rock.
As I look over at the live view, yeah, you are looking pretty bright over there.
Oh, thank you. I was going to say, Kayla also earlier on the tip-off said that I look like Prince Eric, so I'm going to take that for what it's worth as well. Nice little compliment to get my week going. Anywho, we got a lot of news that just came in here too, so maybe we'll get to it. But honestly, I wanted to hear your reaction. How was UFC yesterday for you?
Well, outside of right at 7 o'clock, us losing a fight, and DraftKings is already locked. So I literally went into my spreadsheet and I just put black boxes through every Dakar Close and Jeremy Stevens, and I realized half my lineups were done.
It's just the most disgusting feeling.
I went to the main card with one clean lineup. It was just like, oh God, I mean, look, we had 4 split decisions in a row. We have one fight where dude gets kicked in the nuts, cannot finish the fight. Now we're doing a partial round score to figure out who's going to win the fight. Oh man, yeah, it was not. Well, there became a point I just didn't even look at my scores anymore. I'm just like, I'll look when the fights are over. Made a little money, but yeah, was like, no, I'm not even gonna look. It's pointless to look, just because when there is no late swaps in MMA DFS, so that kind of hurts us. How'd you do?
I didn't actually end up playing UFC, which actually worked out great. So it was good for my health yesterday, I think, because I think that was the equivalent of the Paul George news of many moons ago. I just was curious how your reaction to it was, but I've kind of like slimmed down a little bit on UFC on weekends. Saturday's like my one day off, and so I try to go out in the world and do things. And I have a golf tournament, like a big golf tournament tomorrow to get ready for. And so I was out practicing and playing all day, and it was just a good time to kind of step away from the computer a little bit, and also again didn't have to deal with any of the chaos that you did.
Yeah, it's just one of those things that like you're pissed off about 20 minutes and you just like realize like, all right, it is what it is. I mean, what lineups do I have that now we're rooting for? But you mentioned about those injury news that we have coming in here. Hornets situation, PJ Washington will play. Devontae Graham is out. The Raptors starting lineup is in. Flynn, Trent Jr., Watson, Boucher, and Birch. I guess let's start off with the Hornets side of the equation. As I look down here at my sheet that I just have color-coded, I mean, it's like half the roster I've got color-coded in one color or another based on in, out, whatnot. But Terry Rozier with Devontae Graham being out is definitely the guy that I now have circled.
Yeah, absolutely. And you still have Monk out, you still have Hayward out, you still have Ball out, you still have all these guys out. What's really interesting to me is actually the PJ Washington news, because I think Vernon Carey Jr. could have been another crazy piece of value. The guy played like 35 minutes. I didn't know who he was. And then all of a sudden gets ruled in. And I mean, I watch basketball every single day. And to not know who Vernon Carey Jr. was going into that game. And then he just goes out and plays very, very well. I was actually pretty darn impressed by him. I think at 3,100, he would have been a gigantic piece of value and a gigantic piece of the slate if you got PJ Washington out of there. They basically just said, Biyombo sit, Cody Zeller sit. So they're going to play negligible minutes. It becomes really kind of a PJ Washington thing where I think you're going to get him at a lot lower ownership than you would have without the Q tag next to his name. He gets a little bit of that downgrade from people who are just plugging him in now. So I do like getting to some extra PJ Washington. But as you said, Rozier, definitely the guy here. That's not going to surprise anybody.
In terms of his exposure, how high do you want to go on Rozier?
That's a good question, because I think it depends on the site, because over on FanDuel, you've got Doncic, you've got Malachi Flynn, you have Fox as a contrarian spend up, you have Cole Anthony, I think sticks out over there as well. Anthony Simons, if you want to take that dart throw, you probably don't need to at this point. I think ownership is really condensed to some of those other guys that, again, we have a lot of salary to spend up for other players. 7,500 is just a ridiculously great price tag to get on Terry Rozier with Graham out now. I expect that ownership to start to come up a little bit, but because there are those lineups where you need two, I do expect that to kind of be suppressed a little bit. So I'm curious where ownership gets here as we get closer to lock. Over on DraftKings, it's going to be a ton of him as well. 8,300. We have unlimited salary to be spending. Obviously, the price tag isn't as good, but I don't mind getting to right now. We've got him just like high teens. I think that's going to go up to around 25-30%. Curious where Alex is also going to be projecting him and some of the other guys behind the scenes, but looking forward to playing a lot of him and PJ Washington today.
Yeah, before the news came out, we were looking at Devontae Graham being about 10% ownership over on DraftKings. So we'll see how that ownership does shake out there. On the other side of that game, Portland, we know Dame not playing. Is it CJ McCollum season for you?
Yeah, I mean, why wouldn't it be? We've seen such crazy rates for him going back to the last couple of years when you get Damian Lillard off the floor. At least now, too. I mean, before it was something where it was kind of happening right after lock, or maybe I think he got ruled out right before lock last time around. I think the ownership's going to be about appropriate on him, but where it's sitting at now is kind of surprising because I know 8,700 is a big number to be paying for him over on DraftKings, but you're basically getting a guy who's closer to a 10K player when you get Damian Lillard off the floor. I think it's kind of a conservative number. You're getting right now 38 minutes is what we're projecting him for. I like getting definitely over top of that number. Also has shooting guard eligibility. And so you start talking about some of these other pieces that we want to have access to. Kevin Porter Jr., point guard and shooting guard eligible. So many different point guards that we want to be playing on this slate. Paul Watson now guaranteed to start. I don't expect 8 threes. By the way, Spags, what a GOAT call. Almost just talked him into knocking down 10 threes the other night. Absolutely ridiculous, but there's just so many good point guard and shooting guard plays. But CJ McCollum has to be prioritized.
Yeah, I mean, I think when I look at the Blazers, obviously McCollum and Powell are the two guys that stick out. The question is, like, when I was doing some of my crunches, while the deeper dive was going on, Anthony Simmons was just coming up a ton for me. 3,600 over on DraftKings, point guard, shooting guard eligibility. Because the thing I was finding when I was putting together my lineups was like, okay, how much do I want to limit my exposure? Some of these teams that have value across the board. We'll talk about the Raptors here in a moment. You look at this Portland team, Oklahoma City, all these teams. We have so much value on tonight's slate. It's like, how much do I want to get to Anthony Simmons? And I felt like I was getting to way too much.
Yeah, I probably would agree that it's probably too much. 3,600. Going out the last couple games, so obviously played 30 minutes, only a 16% usage though against the Spurs in that outing. 3,600, he's going to look really nice on paper, but again, now you're giving up a position that could be filled by a big spend up option. We have value at some of these other positions. I just find it very hard to believe that like a guy like Luka, who I think you have to be playing at small forward on DK today. I'm almost like making it a point to be doing that because of Malachi Flynn, because of Kevin Porter Jr., because of Gary Trent, because of some of these other guys. I guess Gary Trent can be played at the small forward position as well, but a lot of our value is going to exist at other positions. There's tons of it all over the board. But Anthony Simons is not like, for me, the guy that I'm necessarily having to plug and play. I don't really know what that production is going to look like. And you're going to need kind of the same outing, 29 and a half, 30, even at 3,600 on this kind of a slate, because there's so many plays that in that mid-range can go for 40, 45 today.
Mentioning about that Portland side, one of the questions that came in over our premium Slack account was about Hollis Jefferson and 3,000 over on DraftKings for Portland. I think I saw a note over that he's in the lineup. Yeah,
he's starting. So this is going to be very interesting because how do you just go about projecting these minutes? Because I don't think that they're going to go. I mean, he's played like 7 minutes and 4 minutes. Like he's basically played 12 minutes in his entire Portland career. I think if he starts garnering ownership, I'm just going to be off. And I know 3K, it's like, well, yeah, you can play him. And I generally always say like a 3K guy, a guy at the min can't burn you that badly on DK. Well, today it really, really can, because you're giving up just a position to a guy. It wouldn't matter if he was $0 and you were plugging him in. I just don't think he's going to get enough run. I'm curious where Alex is going to, I'm waiting for this next update, but like 15 minutes is probably going to be the number that you're looking at there. So if you want to take that shot, if he goes out and plays well, maybe he gets extra run, but I just don't see him getting extended run. I don't see it in this spot. They have enough other players that they can plug in. And I'm thinking that I'm going to definitely not be there today.
Of course, appreciate everyone that's in here on a Sunday afternoon, evening, depending on where you're at here, watching live for lock. Of course, be sure to subscribe also right here on YouTube. Hit the notification bell so you know when a new show is live here on the channel. We got shows for you each and every day. Of course, you got to start off your day with the Slate Starter podcast. That's how I start my day. So you got to check out the boys there in the morning as you and Renpack get you ready for that day's NBA slate. Of course, you mentioned about the UFC card from last night. We do have a UFC promo going on over at the site. Get a 50% off a Awesemo Plus MMA monthly pass for $14.98. We got 3 title fights coming up on Saturday night, and you get 2 pay-per-views for that month. So you got to check that out right now. You got to use that promo UFC 261 there. You see it on the screen. Gives you access to that top fighter tool, which is a massive tool to use. I use it each and every week. Ownership projections, player projections, all of that. So be sure to take advantage of that promo. $14.98 for 30 days of Awesemo Plus MMA. Got my sports kind of confused there for a second there.
It's okay. Honestly, reads, like in general, it's just one of those things where sometimes they just flow out and you feel unstoppable, and other days you're like, what is happening? Why can't I speak words? So you're definitely you are way better at this than I am. You are the pro. I'm here on the analyst side where I'm comfortable. I get to do all the easy stuff. I get just to tell people what to do. Also, I'm not going to play a $535 head-to-head Jason Smithy. Thanks so much for hopping in chat and just calling me out and whatever else. You want to see my 1099s? I'll send them to you. I'll show you what I'm capable of. So have a good day, sir. Take care.
Yeah, it's I get some of those sometimes as well, and I just
it's like whatever. Like you're just an idiot. Have a great day, sir.
I've read liner cards for about 10 years now, so I'm just used to it. I'm used to doing this where you work on the play-by-play side of things. We talked about the Raptors. The first thing, even before we got started lineup, I'm like, okay, we're gonna have value here on the Raptors. As I mentioned, the starting lineup is in Flynn, Trent Jr., Watson, Boucher, and Birch. What is your take here on Toronto?
Play a lot of them. I don't see any way around it. Looking up and down the lineup, Gary Trent, Malachi Flynn, Chris Boucher, Yuta Watanabe, I could probably be a little bit lower on. I know that seems to be somebody that is coming up for a lot of people at power forward. Did play 27 minutes, 26% usage. I don't expect that going forward from him, but Paul Watson, Kem Birch, all 5 of those starters are just in absolute smash spots. We're starting to see them get really condensed minutes. I guess if you do want to put Utah in there at power forward, it wouldn't be the worst thing ever, but it's basically those 6 up top. You just kind of mix and match them a lot. I wouldn't want to be getting to more than like 3, maybe 4 of them, but no problem getting to as much of them as possible. There's just so much usage and minutes to go around with, literally. I mean, just look at it. Siakam, Fred VanVleet, Lowry, and OG, they just don't even care. Like, they're just throwing out the B team, but just roster all the dudes.
I found myself limiting my in crunches to 3 Raptors. I didn't want to get to more than 3 Raptors. In one lineup, Paul Watson was coming up a ton for me at 3,700 over on DraftKings. I mean, look, Malachi Flynn, Boucher, Trent Jr., Watson, Birch, they're all getting ownership. So I think the mere question is how many Raptors you want to put in your line. For me, I did not want to go with more than 3 just because there's value across the board, in this 5-game slate.
Yeah, and that's really kind of what it is. And also, they're not all like around 3K. Like, they're 4,600 Kem Birch, Gary Trent's 5,600, Malachi Flynn's 5,900. So 3 of my favorite pieces from the group are sitting in that mid-range. It's harder to imagine, like if they were closer all to 3K, like I know Bembry's 3,100, you could maybe take some shots there in the case he saw extra run, but considering he's not starting, he's only played 13 and 21 minutes in similar situations the last 2, definitely going to probably be a pass for me today, considering he's garnering right around 15% ownership already. But Malachi Flynn, for sure, just like plug and play. Like his price, I know it's very, very difficult for them because he's either priced at a place where he's unplayable if you get Kyle Lowry in or Fred VanVleet in. I guess he's played pretty well alongside FVV, but I can't imagine that it would be a situation where you have either of those 2 guys off the floor and you wouldn't just be all in on a sub 6K point guard that's just been balling out every single situation that he gets. I mean, look at it, like 7 of his last 9 complete slate breakers. So I really think getting to as much Malachi Flynn today, no problem with it.
Yeah, like when I look at the Raptors, this is just like a lost season for them. I mean, the fact of just everything that's happened for them playing here in Tampa, God knows when they'll be able to play back in Toronto, maybe next season. But to me, it's just a lost season. I just look at this, and when you're talking about, 4 of your 5 top players on your roster right now are all out. Then you look on the other side of the equation with Oklahoma City. We know, no SGA. Dort, the last update I saw on Dort is that he's a game time call. With no SGA, and let's just say Dort is playing tonight. Are you a Dort believer?
No, I'm really not. And I know that there's increased situation with all of the pieces that have been out here for a while, but he's kind of been playing a little bit over his head. I'm not going to be going and chasing a little bit of the Lou Dorton and these hot 3-point performances that he's had here of late. Just not really a need. I know he's really, really balled out the last two, but now you've seen that price tag 6,200 came up from 5,700 last time out. Probably going to be off of him either way. I know it's fun to be able to lock in somebody who comes in a little bit late. It's kind of something we talk about all the time on the Slate Starter about swapping and making sure that you're constantly adjusting to news. But considering we have 4 games that are basically front loaded on the slate and then just the one standalone, there's not going to be a ton of late swap situations where I'm going to have to be taking advantage of it. Dort just isn't really going to be a part of my pool today, and I'm just fine with that.
Anybody else on OKC that sticks out to you, whether it's DraftKings or FanDuel?
Yeah, I'm kind of having a tough time with this team as I'm going across the board. We'll see what comes up. But getting Pokusevski in there is really kind of a big deal. And that's kind of the main reason, I guess I should just say that I'm off Dort. Seen some usage into the 20s. He's had 5 of his last 6 games where he's had a usage rate above 21%. It's a lot of shots to take away from a guy like Dort. 6,900 over on DraftKings for Dort's price. That's just going to be such a pass for me. Really, really been hot from 3, 7 of 11 and 3 from 8 his last 2 times out. So Dort's definitely X'd out. I don't really see any need to go to the rest of these guys. They're all priced way, way too high over on DraftKings. Over on FanDuel, I know you can take the shot on Roby at 4,100, but again, this isn't a slate where you need to do that.
Yeah, we're just going to kind of have to see if we get any news right before lock when it comes to Dort. I do want to mention about Gary Trent Jr. because that's going to be a guy that people are going to go to. Like, if you're going to set an over-under on the amount of shots he's going to take tonight, what's the number at?
For who? For whose shots?
Trent Jr.
Let me just pull up what I have for his projected points. That will be fun to figure out. I know he chucked, what was it, 22 the last time he had both of them out. I'd set the over-under at 15, I think. 17. We'll go 17. I think that's about the right number. You going over or under that?
Oh, if you told me 15, it was easy over. 17,
oh, okay.
I feel like 17 is a good number.
All right, I'll set it at 17 and a half, and if you want to, you can just slide into the DMs. Come on now. Go ahead. I might have Bookie Lindquist, Chalk Donkey Lindquist, Paul George Lindquist. I have all these great nicknames. Non-head-to-head player Eric Lindquist. Look at me go.
I 17 and a half, I think I might go the under. I might go the under. But if you told me he shoots the ball 23 times, I wouldn't be shocked.
And he's 5,600, and I know it seems like a shooting dependent. So that is kind of the fun discussion to have because obviously he's very popular for very good reason. But Gary Trent isn't going to be a guy who goes out and gets a double-double. Hasn't had one, I think, the entire season. No, he has not. Not really somebody who's going to go around and pass the ball out. He's had 5 assists. I think that's his high on the season. Yes, it is. So high of 5 assists. Doesn't really fill up the box count, the box score in any other facet besides scoring. So if you were going to be light on somebody from that team, if you're trying to like play 3 Raptors and you want to get different in a tournament, I could get off Gary Trent Jr. Now I'm making a bunch of lineups, so I don't have that issue. I'm getting to about the field and I'm just going to kind of move on with my day from there. But Gary Trent would be a guy, if I'm playing single entry, 3 max, that would be a guy that I would be happy to be underneath because if he doesn't go out and light the world on fire from 3, it's going to be difficult to imagine him getting there in this situation.
We did get the Orlando starting lineup a little while ago. Not really not really any surprises there. I mean, they're a team that I think Josh had a line. They played 22 players in the last month or something, something along those lines. As a Magic fan, I'm completely aware of this. Wendell Carter Jr. as center, 6,400 on DK, and same price over on FanDuel. What are you doing with him? I guess it's probably more of a FanDuel situation in terms of tonight's center slate.
Yeah, and you're going to get Mohamed Bamba in. So I think I'm going to be lighter than what the number sits at right now. I can understand getting to him. He's been pretty fantastic. Went out and just smoked Chicago in a revenge game. That must have felt nice for him. Played pretty decently well against Toronto. I just think that I'm going to be spending up a lot at center over on FanDuel. And so going to Wendell Carter isn't necessarily going to be fitting my builds. I would rather just eat the chalk. There you go, everybody. Chris Boucher, absolutely love getting to as much of him as possible. I think Kelly Olynyk, we haven't even talked about, but in another fantastic spot. I really kind of like the way he's been playing for them of late. And seeing some increased run. We didn't really see many situations that, man, I've said situations like 48 times today. I'm going to stop that. But I really like Kelly Olynyk and being able to see him get to those 30, 35, 40-minute marks in a lot of these spots. I really like his price tag at 6,300 on FanDuel. I think there's a little extra upside that exists there. I think I would rather be going that direction than Wendell Carter at about the exact same ownership. So I'll take the $100 savings that's there, that's kind of negligible, and just play the guy that I think has the guaranteed run to 33 minutes. I mean, they got completely blown out of the water against Denver, still got to 27 minutes, still got 14 shot attempts up. So looking at the 38 minutes that he's played, against Indiana, low 30s minutes, pretty much routinely every single time out, like getting to Olynyk much more.
Yeah, I mean, I know I saw a comment over in our Slack a little earlier when the Magic starting lineup came in and basically saying, wow, no T. Ross, still can't get into the starting lineup. 5,900. We've talked about him. He's a streaky guy, and when he gets hot, but unfortunately, he's just one of those guys when he doesn't have that three-pointer going, and he's just not going to score well for you here. Outside of Wendell Carter Jr., I just don't like much here with the Magic tonight. I mean, I know there's value with the Magic, but outside of Wendell Carter Jr., he's really the only guy I want to get to on this team.
I'm getting to a little bit of Cole Anthony over on FanDuel. He's very, very popular over there as well. I think we're going to see in this next run. I haven't updated, but we'll see that get updated towards. I'm guessing Rozier gets into the 30s, 40% of ownership on FanDuel there. But I like Cole Anthony still as somebody who can get on top of the minutes there. Really good spot for him. So I don't mind him as well. But Terrence Ross, the big concerning thing, 3 of his last 4 games, just no shot volume whatsoever. I don't know what's going on. This is definitely not the "I am the captain now" meme that we were kind of looking forward to for your team over there. When you're only chucking at 5 shot attempts, 4 and 6 in 27, 25, and 22 minutes. That is not very Terrence Ross like. Now, if you were to go out and just start to chuck, yeah, you could probably see him breaking this slate, and there wouldn't be an issue of getting to as much of him as possible. But I think he's garnering enough ownership that I'm probably going to be underneath it.
When we look at the other side of that game with the Rockets, I think really it comes, you mentioned about Kelly Olynyk, 6,800, Christian Wood, 8,500 on DK. He's 8,000 over on FanDuel. And then Kevin Porter Jr., 6,600 on DK. And he is 6,500 over on FanDuel. He's clearly the player on this Rockets team that everyone's going to be trying to get to tonight. What's your thoughts on Kevin Porter Jr.?
It's really hard not to play him. I have a ton. I think he was my highest owned player over on FanDuel at the small forward position, and I think he was even cheaper over on DraftKings. I mean, what can you possibly say? He's in a phenomenal spot. There's nobody else there. 6,600 over on DK. I think he was like 3rd or 4th. But when you're playing 2 small forwards and you get a guy who's going to play 35, almost 40 minutes, completely blowout immune for the most part. They're giving him run in every situation. There's the buzzword again. And I love getting to as much Kevin Porter as you can. That assist rate is out of this world right now, taking Wall off the floor, playing alongside Wood. I have a ton of interest in Porter, and I don't know how you couldn't.
All right, we just got the lineup in for the Rockets. Porter Jr., Brooks, Tate, Olynyk, and Wood.
Is that Armani Brooks? Is that who that is?
Yes, that is.
My.
He is 3,200 on DraftKings, and over on FanDuel, he is 3,600.
What? Okay. I like this. I'm pulling up. You keep going. I'm going to pull up their last box score because that confuses me. Did I just completely overlook Armani? How many minutes did he play last time out? Because I know he didn't start. He played. All right. He got to 21 minutes. 4-7 there. That's fine. What is he over here for the season? This is just absurd. Thanks, Houston. Thank you so much. He was already gaining like single digit ownership. That's going to come up, I would expect, in the starting lineup. Oh man, that's an interesting one. I'll leave the thoughts out there. We still have half an hour here. I'm gonna run a little survey thing on him and find out exactly where he's been, because I didn't even think about him. He played at Houston, and that's what I know about him. So
before this news came out, we were looking at 6% ownership on him over on the DraftKings side of the equation. I mentioned about Kevin Porter Jr. Want to bring this up. Of course, we are sponsored by No House Advantage. Of course, you've heard us talk about No House Advantage. Be sure to use that promo code. Also, get a $20 bonus on your first deposit when you use that promo code Awesemo. Let me mention about Kevin Porter Jr. over here. Of course, you can check out those projections over at awesemo.com. 16.5 per points. Alex says we need to go over on that one. When it goes to points and rebounds, the line there is 20.5, and then points, rebounds, and assists 26.5. If you look over there, you can see it there on the screen. Basically, we're looking at going over on all those prop bets.
Yeah, it's such a good spot. As if you needed more ammunition to be playing Kevin Porter Jr. Yeah, just play the guy. I'm going to run, though. So I'm curious what him and Brooks on the court together has looked like. I mean, it's going to be such a limited sample, and I don't think it really matters that much. Like, just using common sense, Kevin Porter's playing the big minutes there. But 31 minutes they've shared the court together. Kevin Porter Jr. still has a 33% usage rating in those minutes. So that's not going to be an issue. Let's take a look at the assist rate. 53.3% assist rate with Kevin Porter in those 31 minutes. I have no issues with playing Brooks and him together. That's just fine. Go ahead. I'm probably not going to get to much Brooks still. We'll see what those minutes look like, but I really do. Kevin Porter's just such a good play today.
Yeah, and of course, be sure to use that promo code over at No House Advantage, the promo code Awesemo, a $20 bonus on your first deposit when you use that promo code here. Christian Wood, 8,500 over on DraftKings, 8,000 over on FanDuel. As we look at the power forward position on FanDuel, what is your thoughts about Christian Wood here tonight?
Love him. Again, it's too cheap. They haven't really priced him up for the amount of production that he's seen playing 35 minutes. That loss to Denver, he is the one guy who is the most affected by blowouts, but you're playing Orlando. I have no issue. I'm not going to even remotely consider that in the same way you might against Denver, where you saw him get limited. So if there is a blowout, I apologize, but 40% of the field will be there with you. I do like going down to Harrison Barnes, and not somebody that we've really going to talk about, but high total game 231. Getting to Harrison Barnes feels like a thing that I've been doing quite a bit on that team. Just has such crazy minute security. Played 40 minutes in 4 of the last 5. Like, that's a ridiculous amount of time to just be on the court where you can run into some stats. And right now, garnering the 5th most ownership at the position. I'm definitely going to be above that by quite a ways. Jayshawn Tate, I don't think it should be any surprise that he's played fantastic here as well of late. Played 32 minutes in that blowout. Going to be getting to quite a bit of him as well. He's kind of my favorite of that grouping. Khem Birch is the hard guy that I've had a tough time because you can't play everybody, and he's garnering enough ownership. I think I'm going to go to some of my other plays on Toronto. It feels like he might be the odd man out. Has played well, but not a high usage guy by any means. At 4,500, if you need the savings, no problem plugging him in. But I think getting to Wood, getting to Barnes, and then obviously Porzingis as well in a great spot in that on the opposite side of Barnes in that game. That's going to do a lot for me at the power forward position. I think I'm going to get different elsewhere. And I know Rondé Hollis Jefferson, people are talking about at 3,500. I'm looking around and see his name popping up everywhere. Don't overreact. I just don't think he's going to get enough minutes to be that viable. Right now, I have him in for 15 minutes, and he's not coming up in anything for me.
Gene, we appreciate you in the super chat. He goes, Eric, which of your Wolves are going to make me sad tonight?
Oh, all of them. They make me sad every single night. So welcome to the party. This is great. No, play Cat. I think it's pretty easy to say play Cat. I think it was right before us. EMac said playing Jared Vanderbilt in cash or something. Don't play Jared Vanderbilt in cash. He hasn't really seen a ton of court time as is. He ended up getting 22 minutes of run. that box score has looked better. He's had some decent fantasy production of late, but he didn't enter that game until like the very end of the first quarter. Not a guy that I'm going to get to whatsoever. I think it's a pretty easy spot to be playing cat and moving yourself along. Again, you got to spend salary somewhere. They're nearly 10-point dogs. Not my favorite situation. There it is again. I'm going to start catching myself, but I love cat.
By the way, the starting lineup for your Charlotte Hornets is in Rozier, Cody Martin, McDaniels, Bridges, and Carey.
Okay, so Carey is starting. That's going to be a thing because
I'm not surprised by that.
Okay, so I mean, my question is, what does this mean for Washington? Because you would expect him to start with the cast of characters that they have there. That really kind of freaks me out because I was expecting to be over the field on PJ Washington, but that was pretty contingent on him starting 29 minutes. He's still probably, I don't know. I've got to give him a little bit of a minutes dock off of that. I will probably be getting to, that's uncomfortable. I wouldn't assume that it's just a situation, like they're not going to just be making him active and not be playing him here. They would have just ruled him out. There's no reason for that. That is very, very strange to me. But yeah, downgrade PJ Washington a little bit. Felt like a good spot to be on tournaments and maybe not anymore. Oh my gosh. We just got Terrence Ross ruled out. Oh my gosh. That's a beat writer I trust. Yep. That is Terrence Ross out. Awesome.
All right.
Cool. All right. Well, let's figure this out.
So that would make that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 guys currently on the Magic roster who are not playing tonight.
Yep.
We're throwing Fultz and
MCW,
Jonathan
Porter
Isaac?
Jr., Ennis. I've got my list, and Ross scratched. Yeah, that's going to be enjoyable. All right, Cole Anthony, 5,800, definitely in play on DraftKings now. FanDuel, 5K, definitely a priority. How about that? We now have another insanely good point guard play to add to the fray. He was already getting into some of my lineups. I talked about him on FanDuel being probably my favorite piece there. We got Mohamed Bamba in. So that's a downgrade a little bit for Wendell Carter. They're going to split minutes at the center position. You're looking at probably 30 and 18 is basically, it's going to be a clean, even split. They're not going to share the court together. That makes that easy. Chuma Okeke becomes a guy that I actually have quite a bit of interest now at the power forward position. They got to have some scoring from somewhere. This whole game is just like off the hook now. Chesson Randall, 3,300, I think becomes interesting on DraftKings. Again, I'm just doing this on the fly. Nothing's updated. Curious what the minutes will be for him as well on the next run of ownership and the next update on Cruncher here from all the guys here at Awesemo. But then RJ Hampton has to be getting more minutes. Wow. Dwayne Bacon's in that starting lineup, right? Is that what I just saw as well?
Correct, yeah. And by the way,
Okay.
we do have a new ownership update.
Okay. Well, that's not going to have Ross getting scratched accounted for it yet, but
No,
that's-
just looking at it. So prior to this, we had T. Ross at 16%.
okay. Yeah, he was way higher over on FanDuel. I think he was like around 23, 24%. So that ownership has to go somewhere. That ownership should be flooding to places like rate like at the equal for 1K more, you can get to Gary Trent. I mean, 5,100 Ross was going to pop on FanDuel. This is now going to get very, very interesting. I think Dwayne Bacon at 3,800 at the shooting guard position needs to be kind of prioritized at this point in time. Looking at his rates, he's not going to pop in terms of rates, 0.67 fantasy points per minute. I'm going to run an NBA. I'm going to go to WoW year quick and figure out exactly what's going on with him in Orlando. I feel like there's just going to be so many minutes going his way now compared to what he's been playing. Gary Harris over on FanDuel was somebody that, man, all the dudes now become just so insanely viable, but none of them are like high usage dudes, which is part of what freaks me out. I don't want to like overreact. I think Cole Anthony, okay, let's put it this way. Cole Anthony, priority. I think Chuma Okeke, probably my favorite tournament guy on power forward. He's probably going to be around single digit ownership still on FanDuel. And there's just such condensed ownership on that top end with Wood, Porzingis, Tate, Barnes. there's definitely an upside that exists to Okiki. We've seen it of late. He's been a plug and play in similar situations. I really like Orlando. Oh, I almost died there. I really like Orlando.
A game we haven't talked about is Sacramento and Dallas. And I know this was a conversation that they had on the strategy show of when you look at, Holmes and Bagley out of this lineup of obviously Fox, everyone's going to love. But the question is who else on Sacramento do you want to go to? Do you want to go to a Hassan Whiteside on FanDuel?
Yes and no. 5,400 is just probably too cheap, but I think there's so many good plays, and getting 24 minutes of him, obviously you can smash that out of the water. He did in 23 minutes up against the Wizards at like basically no ownership. Then he was super high owned, put up 27, was viable there, but not necessarily the ceiling. I think you can get more minutes. I still like the Kelly Olynyk pay up. I still like Towns as your tournament guy to be going to. Because just going to be your highest projected. You talk about raw points at any position. I mean, it's him, Boucher, 1-2, and Boucher is just such a standout at 7,300. Again, where else can those minutes go? And we get 31 minutes of a guy who's a 1.25 fantasy point per minute producer on FanDuel, sits up even higher when you take all of the plethora of guys off the floor for them. 7,300, I'd much rather still go his direction than play somebody that I don't think has 28, 30-minute upside. I think his ceiling is just a little too capped. Now, his ownership is low enough where taking that dart isn't the wrong decision by any means. Can he get to 40 and end up optimal? Sure. But I think I'm going to go the raw points direction with some of these other guys.
By the way, a little note on the Hornets from our guy, News God, the Hornets coach, pregame on Vernon Carey's defense. Where do we want to put him in the pick and roll? I just don't know the answer yet. We're going to figure that out of the remaining games, but his timing at the rim, the feel, he does have that.
I mean, I was going to play a ton of Vernon Carey if you got PJ Washington out. Like, I was planning on just making that a big stand on this slate. But now that he's starting, I still think that he's a fantastic tournament option. There's 30-minute plus upside there. He could split the court with PJ Washington there. That's not necessarily a concern, but PJ Washington does his best work playing at the 5. And is he going to come in and sub directly for Carey Jr.? I really don't know the answer. I'm a lot lower, obviously, with Washington not in that starting lineup. And then Carey Jr. still, he's cheap enough where if you were to play 30 plus minutes, that's a great tournament dart to be taking.
Well, that was a question that we got in Slack from Giles saying, how many minutes does Carey get? Saying projections have him at 20.
That's that's a lot lower. I mean, if I had him at 25 here, I think, we've got him at 20. So 35 minutes last time out, but look at all the bodies that they had out for that one too. They limited Zeller. Biyombo didn't see the floor, I don't believe. No, he played 8 minutes against Brooklyn. Okay. Cody Zeller did not see the floor against Brooklyn. You have Washington, who did not play, hasn't played since the 11th. I do like him to still, again, that's the kind of play that's not going to show up in an optimizer, but is there upside for him to get to 30 minutes? We just saw him play 35. I think there is. It's not going to pop in a projection, but again, that's a tournament dart. That's somebody that has a path to way more minutes than we're projecting him for. Do you want to get to him in 20, 30% of your lineups? Probably not, but happy to get to a little bit.
Talk about the Mavs. To me, this is a smash spot for Luka. I've got Luka all over the place in terms of this one. He is outside of Cat. He's the pay up option that I'm going to tonight.
Yeah, and I think if you're on Cruncher, being able to plug him in at small forward and just changing that position is not the worst idea, because now we have even more guards from Orlando that we're going to want to play and put alongside him. Make sure you're trying to get him over at small forward, because playing him at a guard spot just seems suboptimal to me. So I'm going to get myself to a lot of Luka. I think it's small forward. That ownership on him is too low. We're talking a lot about raw points. He's going to project out for the most of them on this slate by quite a margin. I believe 9 is the number that we have him projected by the most over on Awesemo. So play a lot of Doncic.
Yeah, he is the guy. And the one thing, as we talked about injury situations, Dallas is really the one team outside of Terry being out. They're a team that has no injury situations tonight, so they're easy to come back to, and figure out where you want to go with them.
Yep, love it.
Mentioned a question from Slack saying, "Is it okay to play Boucher and Birch in the same DraftKings GPP lineup?"
Yes, it is.
Well, we'll leave it right there. We briefly touched on.
Yeah, they're not going to be, and Birch isn't expensive by any means enough that they both can't get their share. I just said that I'm making sure that I don't get to like 4 Raptors. I think there's still a case to be made that they can get there in this spot, but I think 3 is about the right number that I would want to be capping it at, and so I'm going to kind of roll with that.
Of course, you got to be following us on Twitter at Awesemo NBA. Also, be sure to follow News Guide on Twitter as well at News NEWZGOD_DFS, as he's bailed me out of a lot of situations when I need to do some swaps. So you got to follow us there on Twitter. Stay up to date with all the NBA news and notes going on here. We talked a lot about the Clippers earlier on, and we're going to play that guessing game in terms of Kawhi and Paul, but in terms of we know about the T-Wolves and their defense, but let's talk about their offense here. Cat obviously is someone that you're going to want to get to. What else on this T-Wolves team do you want to get to?
Nothing. It is really unappealing. It's a tough defensive matchups, like just a tough defensive matchup spot. D'Angelo Russell exists coming off the bench here lately, 6,500 over on FanDuel. Not really anything you need to get to. 6,100 seems like a place that just looks weird to see D'Angelo Russell, but hasn't played over 24 minutes. He had 2 games off against Brooklyn and Milwaukee, came back against the Heat, played 23, just over 23 minutes. They're closer to 24. Enough usage that he's going to soak all of the goodness out of everybody else there, except for Cat, who kind of like sits on an island. He just makes the contrarian spend up. I mean, 11K and 10.6 would be awful on a normal slate where you didn't have value, but that's not what we're looking at today. He has 60 plus fantasy point upside. If they keep this game close, he's going to be the reason why. Outside of Cat, it's just so hard to imagine playing anything else with all the news that we have and all the security that exists in these early games for 8, 9, 10x of value. I find no reason to be sitting on Timberwolves later into the night.
Yeah, just looking at our last ownership, Anthony Edwards getting a little bit of ownership as well. But yeah, when it comes to the rest of the team, there's not much there. And I mean, obviously we always talk about late swap, but that's just one of the, tonight's one of those weird nights where, 7:30, 4 of the 5 games have locked, and God knows when we're going to get the news on the Clippers.
I can't even think about it. It makes me cringe already thinking about what could happen from the Clippers side of the ball. But again, I do think that it would be difficult to imagine a world where it's going to completely ruin your slate. If Kawhi and Paul George were to miraculously both get ruled out, what would that value look like at increased price tags compared to some of these other situations in earlier games, in the Oklahoma City spot, in Toronto spot? Like, I still would over project those guys on the front end. I wouldn't be as interested in all the Clippers as is. So like, for me, it's really trying to get to the raw points of the stars. Like it comes down to taking the chance that you get Kawhi Leonard in that late game. I would make sure in any lineup, I think the way that I would combat it on FanDuel is I would try to leave another position open. But the problem is, like, other than Cat, I don't want to play many other guys in this game. So FanDuel feels like a difficult place to be playing with Kawhi Leonard kind of hanging in the balance. It's kind of like you either play him or you're going to be leaving 5K on the table to go down to the next small forward. On DraftKings, because I'm doing that deal where I'm leaving 200 on the table, I'm taking Paul George out of my player pool in other crunches here as we're going along, and then I'm reinserting him back, leaving $200, so $49,800 at the top for the max on Fantasy Cruncher, crunching that way. So I have access to get to Kawhi Leonard if he were to get ruled in, because I think from a tournament perspective, he's just so valuable if you were to be like 2, 3, 4%.
Of course, I mentioned about you got to follow us at Awesemo NBA for the latest news. And the latest news coming in, Lou Dort will play. Okay.
Well, that makes everybody in OKC way, way more unappealing. So we weren't going to be going crazy that direction anyway. So that solidifies it.
Yeah, I mean, just looking at our most recent ownership projections, just Malachi Flynn is the player that a lot of people are getting to 5,900 over on the DraftKings side of things. When it comes to over on the FanDuel side of things, Flynn's still top 10 in ownership that we're seeing there. Mentioned a question from DK Priest over in Slack. He says Luka and Carey or Porzingis and Cole Anthony on a FanDuel GPP. My question with that would be is more about the minutes on Carey. Is he going to be closer to 26, 27 minutes as opposed to say 20 minutes, which he has a projection?
I mean, Carey's power forward there, that helps a lot in making that kind of an interesting way to go in a tournament. If that's a single entry question, I really do like both sides of it. I like Cole Anthony, and I like getting to a little bit at 4K, some Vernon Carey. But if you're giving me one and I'm picking one, I'm going to go the Porzingis Cole Anthony side, because I think Cole Anthony becomes one of the better priorities to have on this slate.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. Next up, Wendell Carter or Kelly Olynyk on a FanDuel single entry.
That's kind of the question for everybody today. They're priced right next to each other. I'm going the Kelly Olynyk side in one lineup. If you have a couple, I understand splitting it. Wendell Carter not having Terrence Ross on the floor is definitely an upgrade for him just in terms of his output. But you do have Mo Bamba there. It's not like Wendell Carter was getting extended outside of 32 minutes, I guess, either way. But we did see a couple games. He only played 27 and 26 against Milwaukee and Indiana with Bamba there. That definitely makes a little bit of concern. Like there's a little bit of concern I have that he might not get completely to that 32-16 split I talked about earlier. But I would be erring just on the security of Kelly Olynyk, but Wendell Carter, considering they're basically owned the exact same number, I get why you might want to go there as well.
I mean, the question you're always going to have with Wendell Carter is potentially getting into early foul trouble. Maybe that extends Mo Bamba out a little bit as well. I mean, that's always going to be a conversation we're going to have when it comes to, Wendell Carter and with this Magic team. In question, we talk about PJ Washington not being in the starting lineup. The question's got to be is now what do you project him minutes wise?
Not great. Right now, I just moved it down to 25. That's not going to be something that I'm going to get to any of him on a slate where I was kind of thinking he was going to be one of the bigger priorities that I had. Alex just moved him down to 25 as well. Just not going to get I'm going to get to 0% PJ Washington at this point.
By the way, we just got ownership projections updated, so people can check that out over at Awesemo.com. Of course, be sure to subscribe to Awesemo right here on YouTube as well. Hit that notification bell so you know when a new show is live here on the channel. We got a ton of shows for you each and every day. And, of course, be sure to give this video a thumbs up as well. One of the players that we talked about that now is coming up as one of the topper-owned guys over on the DraftKings side of things, Dwayne Bacon at 4,100, seeing some ownership.
Oh, yeah.
Looking over on the FanDuel side of things, he is not as highly owned over there.
Yeah, I really like Dwayne Bacon, which is not a great feeling to have at for anybody who's around a 0.7 fantasy point per minute rate. There's just so many guys out, and you take Terrence Ross off the floor and it becomes a little bit better profile for him. Yeah, 4,100 on DK, way too good of a piece. I will be over the field on that number that just popped up.
Any concerns with Luka Doncic reaching the ceiling with a possible blowout?
No, because even from a raw points, like if they do blow him out, I got to think it's Porzingis and Luka that are the main dudes who benefited from it. And Luka still becomes such a great raw points guy to be plugging into your lineup. So even if you were to get 50, it has a path to being optimal, because where else are you spending salary on the slate? I know that seems counterintuitive, where it's like, yeah, obviously there could definitely be a blowout in this spot, but I am not factoring that in whatsoever. Plus Sacramento has enough ammunition on the other side. I think they might be able to keep it a little closer than you think. Vegas isn't like completely writing them off. 8.5. We've seen some massive 15, 16 point spreads of late in other spots. You have that Clippers game and that Clippers Timberwolves game sitting at 10 right now. Don't overthink that too much.
Yeah. CJ McCollum, FanDuel is where he's getting that ownership. What do you what's your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I love CJ McCollum. I don't know how you wouldn't be getting to him. When you get Lillard off the floor, it becomes a different basketball player. We saw a lot of ceiling games from him early in his when he came back, pretty much right out of the gate. It was kind of surprising to see the minutes get elevated after 2 months off. He was out from January 16th until March 16th, played 26 minutes that first game, which I think was surprising to me. Got up to 38 minutes a week later. So playing big minutes, going to be playing 38, 40 minutes. Pretty much in any spot where you're not going to get Lillard. Bad opponent on the other side in Charlotte, a game that'll be moving up and down. CJ McCollum is basically an 80 at 7,900 on FanDuel. You're getting a 10K or close to like a $9,500 player for a $1,600 discount.
Mention some super chats. A super chat I missed a little earlier from I'm a Tulsa dog. Eric, if you were in the Chiefs huddle, would Travis Kelce get you confused with Pat Mahomes?
What?
Yeah.
But I got to read that. If you're in the Chiefs huddle, would you give me? Yes, he would. Yes, he would. I just had a daughter. I don't know. He's got a weird voice too. I don't know. Patrick Mahomes feels a little up here, like more than me. I don't know. He's got a lovely voice. I think it's beautiful. It's very soothing. No, it's not. I'm sorry. I'm the best you got. I'm so sorry.
Another super chat. Bacon or Martin at shooting guard in a FanDuel GPP?
I like Bacon.
Yeah. Let's see here. PG Birch or KP Halliburton?
PJ is not going to be if it's PJ and somebody that I'm not playing that. So yeah. Write it off. Yeah.
Is it worth recrunching to get to Avery Bradley now?
What? No. Like, that's not, no. If he's the guy that you're like, oh, I need to play Avery Bradley on this slate, that's not a great feeling to have. Like, that's just don't do it. I mean, I have no problem getting to him he's going to be low owned. He's the min on FanDuel. Sure, play a little bit, but you don't have to throw everything out the window in order to to account for having Avery Bradley in your lineups.
The Blazers starters in McCollum, Powell, Hollis Jefferson, Covington, and Nurkic.
Okay, that sounds about right.
Dort or Healed for a FanDuel GPP?
Healed for sure, but that's a weird thing to be saying out loud.
Yeah,
I don't like Buddy Hield very much ever. I think that's a pretty well-known fact, but if you're telling me one guy to try to spike an upside, Buddy Hield can go out and spike an upside playing 34 minutes in a fast-paced game against Dallas.
Yeah, I was just going to look up Hollis Jefferson in terms of what we're seeing ownership-wise on him. Third most owned over on the FanDuel side of the thing when it comes to Portland.
No way. Really?
Yeah, when it comes up to Trailblazers, it's McCollum, Powell, and then Hollis Jefferson.
Oh my dear goodness! Yeah, I'm gonna get to 0. That's kind of an exciting thing. I know he's 3,500.
Yeah, that was on the DraftKings side of things.
The DraftKings side. Okay, that makes sense. Where he's 3K, I could see why people wanted to play him even at a 20 minutes projection. I get it, but again, I think there's other places I want to go. I do have a little bit, but I am well underneath the field.
Yeah, 6 over on the FanDuel side of things when it comes to the Trailblazers.
Okay.
Is there a player you feel like you're just overexposed on tonight?
RJ Hampton. That is the answer. I have some weird Orlando guys. I have RJ Hampton showing up now. Dante Hall is not the craziest thing I've ever heard in the entire world, which doesn't make me super excited about things. That's wrong. I'm taking him out there. That should not have been. He was sneaking in. Dwayne Bacon, Cole Anthony, RJ Hampton. Those three make me terrified for what's about to happen in my life.
Yeah. I mean, I'm looking at this Clippers game and it's if George and Kawhi both don't play, how much Nick Batum do you want to get to?
So Nick Batum doesn't necessarily benefit as much as some of the other pieces. He's not a high usage guy. He's been knocking down threes. I think he probably is one of the guys who benefits from having one of the two active in as opposed to having like both of them in, because he needs somebody to help him create a shot. He's not going to go out and make things happen for himself. He's definitely the beneficiary of Paul George driving in the lane, kicking it out, knocking down threes here and there, but can fill up the box score, going to see increased run. I think that probably helps out the profile of it. But if they both get ruled out, I mean, I will have a malfunction. I will just shut down. That's what's going to happen.
Can't wait to monitor your Twitter about 9:30.
Hey, thank you so much, guys. That's going to be great. Honestly, I'm glad to provide that content for you all.
Hey, look, I'm just being honest over here, you know? So sometimes you offer, you know, as I'm just sitting on the couch scrolling through Twitter, you know, sometimes I see some good content come across.
Some men just want to watch the world burn, Mr. Wayne. You are one of them.
Hey, look, I'm just over here as I'm just kind of, you know, putting together, you know, just my final pieces of, you know, as I just look at this late game, what do I want to do? You know, I'm limiting my exposure on PJ Washington with him not starting. That's a concerning aspect of to me.
Yeah, I don't have any. That's kind of the way that I'm combating that.
Yeah, I mean, how much Vernon Carey do you want to get to in terms of where his minutes might be? You know, I do have a lot of Boucher over on FanDuel side of the equation.
Good, as you should. Yeah, you're a sharp guy. Not only that, but this is probably like, if you were ever going to win a tournament with your team, today is the day. Like, this is the day that Orlando, at lower ownership than they would be, had a lot of this news broken earlier in the day, and we had time to break down exactly who's going to be benefiting and trying to take different tournament shots. Like, so many pieces of that game are going to go way lower owned than they would have had that news come out an hour and a half ago even. So get excited about the Orlando Magic. I'm not that excited about the Orlando Magic because I have way too much of them. Yeah.
How do I win on DK with a NASCAR driver with -1 point? Wow.
Is that happening?
Yes, it literally happened in a cash game.
Oh, that's incredible. Honestly.
You know,
yeah. You do such a good job with the NASCAR analysis, you guys.
I guess it also helps. I had the guy finish first, second, fourth, and fifth. I guess that does kind of help that situation.
First, second, fourth, fifth, 58th crash. Good times.
He crashed on the first lap.
It's not ideal.
First lap.
Not ideal.
Usually when that happens, I just don't even look at the roster anymore. Hey, that's a good start to the night. But we have reached lock. Good luck to everyone here tonight. Of course, keep it locked there to our Awesemo Twitter account, Awesemo NBA, for those news when it comes to the Clippers, who's in, who's out. So good luck to everyone tonight, and we will talk to you again tomorrow. Keep it locked here to Awesemo.com.
Paul George had better play.